Sirach 1-1. All wisdom comes from the Lord, and is with him forever. Sirach 1-2. Who can number the sand of the sea, and the drops of rain, and the days of eternity? Sirach 1-3. Who can find out the height of heaven, and the breadth of the earth, and the deep, and wisdom? Sirach 1-4. Wisdom has been created before all things, and the understanding of prudence from everlasting. Sirach 1-5. The word of God Most High is the fountain of wisdom, and her ways are everlasting commandments. Sirach 1-6. To whom has the root of wisdom been revealed? Or who has known her wise counsels? Sirach 1-7. To whom has the knowledge of wisdom been made manifest? And who has understood her great experience? Sirach 1-8. There is one wise and greatly to be feared, the Lord sitting upon his throne. Sirach 1-9. He created her, and saw her, and numbered her, and poured her out upon all his works. Sirach 1-10. She is with all flesh according to his gift, and he has given her to those who love him. Sirach 1-11. The fear of the Lord is honor, and glory, and gladness, and a crown of rejoicing. Sirach 1-12. The fear of the Lord makes a merry heart, and gives joy, and gladness, and a long life. Sirach 1-13. Whoso fears the Lord, it will go well with him at the last, and he will find favor in the day of his death. Sirach 1-14. To fear the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, Psalms 111 hours 10 minutes, Proverbs 9:10. And it was created with the faithful in the womb. Sirach 1-15. She has built an everlasting foundation with men, and she will continue with their seed. Sirach 1-16. To fear the Lord is fullness of wisdom, and fills men with her fruits. Sirach 1-17. She fills all their house with desirable things, and the gardeners with her increase. Sirach 1-18. The fear of the Lord is a crown of wisdom, making peace and perfect health to flourish, both which are the gifts of God, and it enlarges their rejoicing who love him. Sirach 1-19. Wisdom rains down skill and knowledge of understanding, and exalts them to honor, those who hold her fast. Sirach 1-20. The root of wisdom is to fear the Lord, and the branches thereof are long life. Sirach 1-21. The fear of the Lord drives away sins, and where it is present, it turns away wrath. Sirach 1-22. A furious man cannot be justified, for the sway of his fury will be his destruction. Sirach 1-23. A patient man will tear for a time, and afterward, joy will spring up to him. Sirach 1-24. He will hide his words for a time, and the lips of many will declare his wisdom. Sirach 1-25. The parables of knowledge are in the treasures of wisdom, but godliness is an abomination to a sinner. Sirach 1-26. If you desire wisdom, keep the commandments, and the Lord will give her to you. Sirach 1-27. For the fear of the Lord is wisdom and instruction, and faith and meekness are his delight. Sirach 1-28. Do not distrust the fear of the Lord when you are poor, and do not come to him with a double heart. Sirach 1-29. Do not be a hypocrite in the sight of men, and take good heed what you speak. Sirach 1-30. Do not exalt yourself, unless you fall, and bring dishonor upon your soul, and God so discovers your secrets, and casts you down in the midst of the congregation, because you did not come in truth to the fear of the Lord, but your heart is full of deceit. Sirach 2-1. My son, if you come to serve the Lord, prepare your soul for temptation. Sirach 2-2. Set your heart aright, and constantly endure, and do not make haste in time of trouble. Sirach 2-3. Cleave to him, and do not depart away, that you may be increased at your last end. Sirach 2-4. Whatsoever is brought upon you, take cheerfully, and be patient when you are changed to a low estate. Sirach 2-5. For gold is tried in the fire, and acceptable men in the furnace of adversity. Sirach 2-6. Believe in him, and he will help you, order your way aright, and trust in Him. Sirach 2-7. You who fear the Lord, wait for His mercy, and do not go aside, unless you fall. Sirach 2-8. You who fear the Lord, believe Him, and your reward will not fail. Sirach 2-9. You who fear the Lord, hope for good, and for everlasting joy and mercy. Sirach 2:10. Look at the generations of old, and see, did any ever trust in the Lord, and were confounded? Or did any abide in His fear, and were forsaken? Or whom did He ever despise, who called upon Him? Sirach 2:11. For the Lord is full of compassion and mercy, long-suffering, and very pitiful, and forgives sins, and saves in time of affliction. Sirach 2:12. Woe to fearful hearts, and faint hands, and the sinner who goes two ways. Sirach 2:13. Woe to him who is faint-hearted! For he does not believe, therefore he will not be defended. Sirach 2:14. Woe to you who have lost patience! And what will you do when the Lord will visit you? Sirach 2:15. Those who fear the Lord will not disobey His word, and those who love Him will keep His ways. Sirach 2:16. Those who fear the Lord will seek that which is well, pleasing to Him, and those who love Him will be filled with the law. Sirach 2:17. Those who fear the Lord will prepare their hearts, and humble their souls in His sight. Sirach 2:18. Saying, we will fall into the hands of the Lord, and not into the hands of men, for as His majesty is, so is His mercy. Sirach 3:1. Hear me, your father, O children, and do thereafter, that you may be safe. Sirach 3:2. For the Lord has given the father honor over the children, and has confirmed the authority of the mother over the sons. Sirach 3:3. Whoso honors his father makes an atonement for his sins. Sirach 3:4. And he who honors his mother is as one who lays up treasure. Sirach 3:5. Whoso honors his father will have joy of his own children, and when he makes his prayer, he will be heard. Sirach 3:6. He who honors his father will have a long life, and he who is obedient to the Lord will be a comfort to his mother. Sirach 3:7. He who fears the Lord will honor his father, and will do service to his parents, as to his masters. Sirach 3:8. Honor your father and mother both in word and deed, that a blessing may come upon you from them. Sirach 3:9. For the blessing of the father establishes the houses of children, but the curse of the mother roots out foundations. Sirach 3:10. Do not glory in the dishonor of your father, for your father's dishonor is not glory to you. Sirach 3:11. For the glory of a man is from the honor of his father, and a mother in dishonor is a reproach to the children. Sirach 3:12. My son, help your father in his age, and do not grieve him as long as he lives. Sirach 3:13. And if his understanding fails, have patience with him, and do not despise when you are in your full strength. Sirach 3:14. For the relieving of your father will not be forgotten, and instead of sense, it will be added to build you up. Sirach 3:15. In the day of your affliction, it will be remembered, your sins will also melt away, as the ice in the fair warm weather. Sirach 3:16. He who forsakes his father is as a blasphemer, and he who angers his mother is cursed of God. Sirach 3:17. My son, go on with your business in meekness, so you will be beloved of him who is approved. Sirach 3:18. The greater you are, the more humble yourself, and you will find favor before the Lord. Sirach 3:19. Many are in high places, and of renown, but mysteries are revealed to the meek. Sirach 3:20. For the power of the Lord is great, and he is honored of the lowly. Sirach 3:21. Do not seek out things that are too hard for you, neither search the things that are above your strength. Sirach 3:22. But what is commanded you, think thereupon with reverence, for it is not needful for you to see with your eyes, the things that are in secret. Sirach 3:23. Do not be curious in unnecessary matters, for more things are shown to you than men understand. Sirach 3:24. For many are deceived by their own vain opinion, and an evil suspicion has overthrown their judgment. Sirach 3:25. Without eyes you will want light, do not profess the knowledge therefore that you do not have. Sirach 3:26. A stubborn heart will fare evil at the last, and he who loves danger will perish therein. Sirach 3:27. An obstinate heart will be laden with sorrows, and the wicked man will heap sin upon sin. Sirach 3:28. In the punishment of the proud, there is no remedy, for the plan of wickedness has taken root in him. Sirach 3:29. The heart of the prudent will understand a parable, and an attentive ear is the desire of a wise man. Sirach 3:30. Water will quench a flaming fire, and alms make an atonement for sins. Sirach 3:31. And he who requites good turns is mindful of that which may come hereafter, and when he falls, he will find a stay. Sirach 4:1. My son, do not defraud the poor of his living, and do not make the needy eyes wait long. Sirach 4:2. Do not make a hungry soul sorrowful, neither provoke a man in his distress. Sirach 4:3. Do not add more trouble to a heart that is vexed, and do not defer to give to him who is in need. Sirach 4:4. Do not reject the supplication of the afflicted, neither turn your face away from a poor man. Sirach 4:5. Do not turn away your eye from the needy, and give him no occasion to curse you. Sirach 4:6. For if he curses you in the bitterness of his soul, his prayer will be heard of him who made him. Sirach 4:7. Get yourself the love of the congregation, and bow your head to a great man. Sirach 4:8. Let it not grieve you to bow down your ear to the poor, and give him a friendly answer with meekness. Sirach 4:9. Deliver him who suffers wrong from the hand of the oppressor, and do not be faint-hearted when you sit in judgment. Sirach 4:10. Be as a father to the fatherless, and instead of a husband to their mother, so will you be as the son of the Most High, and he will love you more than your mother does. Sirach 4:11. Wisdom exalts her children, and lays hold of those who seek her. Sirach 4:12. He who loves her loves life, and those who seek to her early will be filled with joy. Sirach 4:13. He who holds her fast will inherit glory, and wherever she enters, the Lord will bless. Sirach 4:14. Those who serve her will minister to the Holy One, and those who love her, the Lord loves. Sirach 4:15. Whoso gives ear to her will judge the nations, and he who attends to her will dwell securely. Sirach 4:16. If a man commits himself to her, he will inherit her, and his generation will hold her in possession. Sirach 4:17. For at first, she will walk with him by crooked ways, and bring fear and dread upon him, and torment him with her discipline, until she may trust his soul, and try him by her laws. Sirach 4:18. Then she will return the straight way to him, and comfort him, and show him her secrets. Sirach 4:19. But if he goes wrong, she will forsake him, and give him over to his own ruin. Sirach 4:20. Observe the opportunity, and beware of evil, and do not be ashamed when it concerns your soul. Sirach 4:21. For there is a shame that brings sin, and there is a shame which is glory and grace. Sirach 4:22. Accept no person against your soul, and do not let the reverence of any man cause you to fall. Sirach 4:23. And do not refrain to speak, when there is occasion to do good, and do not hide your wisdom in her beauty. Sirach 4:24. For by speech, wisdom will be known, and learning by the word of the tongue. Sirach 4:25. In no wise speak against the truth, but be abashed of the error of your ignorance. Sirach 4:26. Do not be ashamed to confess your sins, and do not force the course of the river. Sirach 4:27. Do not make yourself an underling to a foolish man, neither accept the person of the mighty. Sirach 4:28. Strive for the truth to death, and the Lord will fight for you. Sirach 4:29. Do not be hasty in your tongue, and in your deeds, slack and remiss. Sirach 4:30. Do not be as a lion in your house, nor frantic among your servants. Sirach 4:31. Do not let your hand be stretched out to receive, and shut when you should repay. Sirach 5:1. Set your heart upon your goods, and do not say, I have enough for my life. Sirach 5:2. Do not follow your own mind and your strength, to walk in the ways of your heart. Sirach 5:3. And do not say, who will control me for my works? For the Lord will surely revenge your pride. Sirach 5:4. Do not say, I have sinned, and what harm has happened to me? For the Lord is long-suffering, he will in no wise let you go. Sirach 5:5. Concerning propitiation, do not be without fear to add sin to sin. Sirach 5:6. And do not say, his mercy is great, he will be pacified for the multitude of my sins, for mercy and wrath come from him, and his indignation rests upon sinners. Sirach 5:7. Make no delay to turn to the Lord, and do not put off from day to day, for suddenly the wrath of the Lord will come forth, and in your security, you will be destroyed, and perish in the day of vengeance. Sirach 5-8. Do not set your heart upon goods unjustly gotten, for they will not profit you in the day of calamity. Sirach 5-9. Do not winnow with every wind, and do not go into every way, for so does the sinner who has a double tongue. Sirach 5:10. Be steadfast in your understanding, and let your word be the same. Sirach 5:11. Be swift to hear, and let your life be sincere, and with patience, give answer. Sirach 5:12. If you have understanding, answer your neighbor, if not, lay your hand upon your mouth. Sirach 5:13. Honor and shame is in talk, and the tongue of man is his fall. Sirach 5:14. Do not be called a whisperer, and do not lie in wait with your tongue, for a foul shame is upon the thief, and an evil condemnation upon the double tongue. Sirach 5:15. Do not be ignorant of anything in a great matter or a small. Sirach 6-1. Instead of a friend, do not become an enemy, for, thereby, you will inherit an ill name, shame, and reproach, even so will a sinner who has a double tongue. Sirach 6-2. Do not extol yourself in the counsel of your own heart, that your soul is not torn in pieces as a bull, straying alone. Sirach 6-3. You will eat up your leaves, and lose your fruit, and leave yourself as a dry tree. Sirach 6-4. A wicked soul will destroy him who has it, and will make him to be laughed to scorn of his enemies. Sirach 6-5. Sweet language will multiply friends, and a fair-speaking tongue will increase kind greetings. Sirach 6-6. Be in peace with many, nevertheless, have but one counselor of 1,000. Sirach 6-7. If you would get a friend, prove him first and do not be hasty to credit him. Sirach 6-8. For some man is a friend for his own occasion, and will not abide in the day of your trouble. Sirach 6-9. And there is a friend, who being turned to enmity, and strife will discover your reproach. Sirach 6-10. Again, some friend is a companion at the table, and will not continue in the day of your affliction. Sirach 6-11. But in your prosperity, he will be as yourself, and will be bold over your servants. Sirach 6-12. If you are brought low, he will be against you, and will hide himself from your face. Sirach 6-13. Separate yourself from your enemies, and take heed of your friends. Sirach 6-14. A faithful friend is a strong defense, and he who has found such a one has found a treasure. Sirach 6-15. Nothing countervails a faithful friend, and his excellency is invaluable. Sirach 6-16. A faithful friend is the medicine of life, and those who fear the Lord will find him. Sirach 6-17. Whoso fears the Lord will direct his friendship aright, for as he is, so will his neighbor be also. Sirach 6-18. My son, gather instruction from your youth up, so will you find wisdom until your old age. Sirach 6:19. Come to her as one who plows and sows, and wait for her good fruits, for you will not toil much in laboring about her, but you will eat of her fruits right soon. Sirach 6:20. She is very unpleasant to the unlearned, he who is without understanding will not remain with her. Sirach 6:21. She will lie upon him as a mighty stone of trial, and he will cast her from him before it is long. Sirach 6:22. For wisdom is according to her name, and she is not manifest to many. Sirach 6:23. Give ear, my son, receive my advice, and do not refuse my counsel. Sirach 6:24. And put your feet into her fetters, and your neck into her chain. Sirach 6:25. Bow down your shoulder, and bear her, and do not be grieved with her bonds. Sirach 6:26. Come to her with your whole heart, and keep her ways with all your power. Sirach 6:27. Search, and seek, and she will be made known to you, and when you have gotten hold of her, do not let her go. Sirach 6:28. For at the last you will find her rest, and that will be turned to your joy. Sirach 6:29. Then her fetters will be a strong defense for you, and her chains, a robe of glory. Sirach 6:30. For there is a golden ornament upon her, and her bands are purple lace. Sirach 6:31. You will put her on as a robe of honor, and will put her about you as a crown of joy. Sirach 6:32. My son, if you will be taught, and if you will apply your mind, you will be prudent. Sirach 6:33. If you love to hear, you will receive understanding, and if you bow your ear, you will be wise. Sirach 6:34. Stand in the multitude of the elders, and cleave to him who is wise. Sirach 6:35. Be willing to hear every godly discourse, and do not let the parables of understanding escape you. Sirach 6:36. And if you see a man of understanding, come early to him, and let your foot wear the steps of his door. Sirach 6:37. Let your mind be upon the ordinances of the Lord and meditate continually in his commandments, he will establish your heart, and give you wisdom at your own desire. Sirach 7:1. Do no evil, so will no harm come to you. Sirach 7:2. Depart from the unjust, and iniquity will turn away from you. Sirach 7:3. My son, do not sow upon the furrows of unrighteousness, and you will not reap them sevenfold. Sirach 7:4. Do not seek of the Lord preeminence, neither of the king the seat of honor. Sirach 7:5. Do not justify yourself before the Lord, and do not boast of your wisdom before the king. Sirach 7:6. Do not seek to be judge, not being able to take away iniquity, unless at any time you fear the person of the mighty, a stumbling block in the way of your uprightness. Sirach 7:7. Do not offend against the multitude of a city, and then you will not cast yourself down among the people. Sirach 7:8. Do not bind one sin upon another, for you will not be unpunished in one. Sirach 7-9. Do not say, God will look upon the multitude of my oblations, and when I offer to the Most High God, He will accept it. Sirach 7-10. Do not be faint-hearted when you make your prayer, and do not neglect to give alms. Sirach 7-11. Do not laugh at a man to scorn in the bitterness of his soul, for there is one who humbles and exalts. Sirach 7:12. Do not devise a lie against your brother, neither do the like to your friend. Sirach 7:13. Do not make any manner of lie, for the custom thereof is not good. Sirach 7:14. Do not use many words in a multitude of elders, and do not make much babbling when you pray. Sirach 7:15. Do not hate laborious work, neither husbandry, which the Most High has ordained. Sirach 7:16. Do not number yourself among the multitude of sinners, but remember that wrath will not delay for long. Sirach 7:17. Humble yourself greatly, for the vengeance of the ungodly is fire and worms. Sirach 7:18. Do not change a friend for any good, by no means, neither a faithful brother for the gold of a fur. Sirach 7:19. Do not forego a wise and good woman, for her grace is above gold. Sirach 7:20. Whereas your servant works truly, do not entreat him evil, nor the hireling who bestows himself wholly for you. Sirach 7:21. Let your soul love a good servant, and do not defraud him of liberty. Sirach 7:22. Do you have cattle? Have an eye to them, and if they are for your profit, keep them with you. Sirach 7:23. Do you have children? Instruct them, and bow down their neck from their youth. Sirach 7:24. Do you have daughters? Have care of their body, and do not show yourself cheerful toward them. Sirach 7:25. Marry your daughter, and so will you have performed a weighty matter, but give her to a man of understanding. Sirach 7:26. Do you have a wife after your mind? Do not forsake her, but do not give yourself over to a light woman. Sirach 7:27. Honor your father with your whole heart, and do not forget the sorrows of your mother. Sirach 7:28. Remember that you were begotten of them, and how can you recompense them the things that they have done for you? Sirach 7:29. Fear the Lord with all your soul, and reverence his priests. Sirach 7:30. Love him who made you with all your strength, and do not forsake his ministers. Sirach 7:31. Fear the Lord, and honor the priest, and give him his portion, as it is commanded you, the firstfruits, and the trespass offering, and the gift of the shoulders, and the sacrifice of sanctification, and the firstfruits of the holy things. Sirach 7:32. And stretch your hand to the poor, that your blessing may be perfected. Sirach 7:33. A gift has grace in the sight of every living man, and for the dead, do not detain it. Sirach 7:34. Do not fail to be with those who weep, and mourn with those who mourn. Sirach 7:35. Do not be slow to visit the sick, for that will make you beloved. Sirach 7:36. Whatsoever you take in hand, remember the end, and you will never do sin. Sirach 8:1. Do not strive with a mighty man unless you fall into his hands. Sirach 8:2. Do not be at variance with a rich man, unless he overweighs you, for gold has destroyed many, and perverted the hearts of kings. Sirach 8:3. Do not strive with a man who is full of tongue, and do not heap wood upon his fire. Sirach 8:4. Do not jest with a rude man, unless your ancestors are disgraced. Sirach 8:5. Do not reproach a man who turns from sin, but remember that we are all worthy of punishment. Sirach 8:6. Do not dishonor a man in his old age, for even some of us wax old. Sirach 8:7. Do not rejoice over your greatest enemy being dead, but remember that we all die. Sirach 8:8. Do not despise the discourse of the wise, but acquaint yourself with their proverbs, for of them you will learn instruction, and how to serve great men with ease. Sirach 8-9. Do not miss the discourse of the elders, for they also learned of their fathers, and of them you will learn understanding, and to give answer as need requires. Sirach 8-10. Do not kindle the coals of a sinner, unless you are burned with the flame of his fire. Sirach 8-11. Do not rise up, in anger, at the presence of an injurious person, unless he lies in wait to entrap you in your words. Sirach 8:12. Do not lend to him who is mightier than yourself, for if you lend to him, count it but lost. Sirach 8:13. Do not pledge above your power, for if you are pledged, take care to pay it. Sirach 8:14. Do not go to law with a judge, for they will judge for him according to his honor. Sirach 8:15. Do not travel by the way with a bold fellow, unless he becomes grievous to you, for he will do according to his own will, and you will perish with him through his folly. Sirach 8:16. Do not strive with an angry man, and do not go with him into a solitary place, for blood is as nothing in his sight, and where there is no help, he will overthrow you. Sirach 8:17. Do not consult with a fool, for he cannot keep counsel. Sirach 8:18. Do no secret thing before a stranger, for you do not know what he will bring forth. Sirach 8:19. Do not open your heart to every man, unless he requites you with a shrewd turn. Sirach 9:1. Do not be jealous over the wife of your bosom, and do not teach her an evil lesson against yourself. Sirach 9:2. Do not give your soul to a woman to set her foot upon your substance. Sirach 9:3. Do not meet with a harlot, unless you fall into her snares. Sirach 9:4. Do not use much company of a woman who is a singer, unless you are taken with her attempts. Sirach 9:5. Do not gaze on a maid, that you do not fall by those things that are precious in her. Sirach 9:6. Do not give your soul to harlots, that you do not lose your inheritance. Sirach 9:7. Do not look round about you in the streets of the city, neither wander in the solitary place thereof. Sirach 9-8. Turn away your eye from a beautiful woman, and do not look upon another's beauty, for many have been deceived by the beauty of a woman, for herewith, love is kindled as a fire. Sirach 9-9. Do not sit at all with another man's wife, nor sit down with her in your arms, and do not spend your money with her at the wine, unless your heart inclines to her, and so through your desire, you fall into destruction. Sirach 9:10. Do not forsake an old friend, for the new is not comparable to him, a new friend is as new wine, when it is old, you will drink it with pleasure. Sirach 9:11. Do not envy the glory of a sinner, for you do not know what will be his end. Sirach 9:12. Do not delight in the thing that the ungodly have pleasure in, but remember they will not go unpunished to their grave. Sirach 9:13. Keep far from the man who has power to kill, so will you not doubt the fear of death, and if you come to him, make no fault, unless he takes away your life presently. Remember that you go in the midst of snares, and that you walk upon the battlements of the city. Sirach 9:14. As near as you can, guess at your neighbor, and consult with the wise. Sirach 9:15. Let your talk be with the wise, and all your communication in the law of the Most High. Sirach 9:16. And let just men eat and drink with you, and let your glorying be in the fear of the Lord. Sirach 9:17. For the hand of the artificer, the work will be commended, and the wise ruler of the people for his speech. Sirach 9:18. A man of an ill tongue is dangerous in his city, and he who is rash in his talk will be hated. Sirach 10:1. A wise judge will instruct his people, and the government of a prudent man is well ordered. Sirach 10:2. As the judge of the people is himself, so are his officers, and what manner of man the ruler of the city is, such are all those who dwell therein. Sirach 10:3. An unwise king destroys his people, but through the prudence of those who are in authority, the city will be inhabited. Sirach 10:4. The power of the earth is in the hand of the Lord, and in due time, he will set over it one who is profitable. Sirach 10:5. In the hand of God is the prosperity of man, and upon the person of the scribe, he will lay his honor. Sirach 10:6. Do not bear hatred to your neighbor for every wrong, and do nothing at all by injurious practices. Sirach 10:7. Pride is hateful before God and man, and by both does one commit iniquity. Sirach 10:8. Because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches gotten by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another. Sirach 10:9. Why is earth and ashes proud? There is not a more wicked thing than a covetous man, for such sets his own soul to sale, because while he lives, he casts away his bowels. Sirach 10:10. The physician cuts off a long disease, and he who is a king today will die tomorrow. Sirach 10:11. For when a man is dead, he will inherit creeping things, beasts, and worms. Sirach 10:12. The beginning of pride is when one departs from God, and his heart is turned away from his Maker. Sirach 10:13. For pride is the beginning of sin, and he who has it will pour out abomination, and therefore the Lord brought upon them strange calamities, and utterly overthrew them. Sirach 10:14. The Lord has cast down the thrones of proud princes, and set up the meek in their stead. Sirach 10:15. The Lord has plucked up the roots of the proud nations, and planted the lowly in their place. Sirach 10:16. The Lord overthrew countries of the heathen, and destroyed them to the foundations of the earth. Sirach 10:17. He took some of them away, and destroyed them, and has made their memorial to cease from the earth. Sirach 10:18. Pride was not made for men, nor furious anger for those who are born of a woman. Sirach 10:19. Those who fear the Lord are a sure seed, and those who love him, an honorable plant. Those who do not regard the law are a dishonorable seed, those who transgress the commandments are a deceivable seed. Sirach 10:20. Among brethren, he who is chief is honorable, so are those who fear the Lord in his eyes. Sirach 10:21. The fear of the Lord goes before the obtaining of authority, but roughness and pride is the losing thereof. Sirach 10:22. Whether he is rich, noble, or poor, their glory is the fear of the Lord. Sirach 10:23. It is not meet to despise the poor man who has understanding, neither is it convenient to magnify a sinful man. Sirach 10:24. Great men, and judges, and potentates, will be honored, yet there are none greater than he who fears the Lord. Sirach 10:25. To the servant who is wise, those who are free will do service, and he who has knowledge will not grudge when he is reformed. Sirach 10:26. Do not be overwise in doing your business, and do not boast yourself in the time of your distress. Sirach 10:27. Better is he who labors, and abounds in all things, than he who boasts himself, and wants bread. Sirach 10:28. My son, glorify your soul in meekness, and give it honor according to the dignity thereof. Sirach 10:29. Who will justify him who sins against his own soul, and who will honor him who dishonors his own life? Sirach 10:30. The poor man is honored for his skill, and the rich man is honored for his riches. Sirach 10:31. He who is honored in poverty, how much more in riches? And he who is dishonorable in riches, how much more in poverty? Sirach 11:1. Wisdom lifts up the head of him who is of low degree, and makes him to sit among great men. Sirach 11:2. Do not commend a man for his beauty, neither abhor a man for his outward appearance. Sirach 11:3. The bee is little among such that fly, but her fruit is the chief of sweet things. Sirach 11:4. Do not boast of your clothing and raiment, and do not exalt yourself in the day of honor, for the works of the Lord are wonderful, and his works among men are hidden. Sirach 11:5. Many kings have sat down upon the ground, and one who was never thought of has worn the crown. Sirach 11:6. Many mighty men have been greatly disgraced, and the honorable, delivered into other men's hands. Sirach 11:7. Do not blame before you have examined the truth, understand first, and then rebuke. Sirach 11:8. Do not answer before you have heard the cause, neither interrupt men in the midst of their talk. Sirach 11:9. Do not strive in a matter that does not concern you, and do not sit in judgment with sinners. Sirach 11:10. My son, do not meddle with many matters, for if you meddle much, you will not be innocent, and if you follow after, you will not obtain, neither will you escape by fleeing. Sirach 11:11. There is one who labors, and takes pains, and makes haste, and is so much the more behind. Sirach 11:12. Again, there is another that is slow, and has need of help, wanting ability, and full of poverty, yet the eye of the Lord looked upon him for good, and set him up from his low estate. Sirach 11:13. And he lifted up his head from misery, so that many who saw him are in amazement. Sirach 11:14. prosperity and adversity, life and death, poverty and riches, come of the Lord. Sirach 11:15. Wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of the law, are of the Lord, love, and the way of good works, are from him. Sirach 11:16. Error and darkness had their beginning together with sinners, and evil will wax old with those who glory therein. Sirach 11:17. The gift of the Lord remains with the ungodly, and his favor brings prosperity forever. Sirach 11:18. There is one who waxes rich by his wariness and pinching, and this, his portion of his reward. Sirach 11:19. Whereas he says, I have found rest, and now will eat continually of my goods, and yet he does not know what time will come upon him, and that he must leave those things to others, and die. Sirach 11:20. Be steadfast in your covenant, and be conversant therein, and wax old in your work. Sirach 11:21. Do not marvel at the works of sinners, but trust in the Lord, and abide in your labor, for it is an easy thing in the sight of the Lord to suddenly make a poor man rich. Sirach 11:22. The blessing of the Lord is in the reward of the godly, and he suddenly makes his blessing flourish. Sirach 11:23. Do not say, what profit is there of my service? And what good things will I have hereafter? Sirach 11:24. Again, do not say, I have enough, and possess many things, and what evil will I have hereafter? Sirach 11:25. In the day of prosperity there is a forgetfulness of affliction, and in the day of affliction there is no more remembrance of prosperity. Sirach 11:26. For it is an easy thing to the Lord in the day of death to reward a man according to his ways. Sirach 11:27. The affliction of an hour makes a man forget pleasure, and in his end, his deeds will be discovered. Sirach 11:28. Judge none blessed before his death, for a man will be known in his children. Sirach 11:29. Do not bring every man into your house, for the deceitful man has many trains. Sirach 11:30. Like as a partridge taken, and kept, in a cage, so is the heart of the proud, and as a spy, he watches for your fall. Sirach 11:31. For he lies in wait, and turns good into evil, and in things worthy of praise, he will lay blame upon you. Sirach 11:32. Of a spark of fire, a heap of coals is kindled, and a sinful man lays wait for blood. Sirach 11:33. Take heed of a mischievous man, for he works wickedness, unless he brings a perpetual blot upon you. Sirach 11:34. Receive a stranger into your house, and he will disturb you, and turn you out of your own. Sirach 12:1. When you will do good, know to whom you do it, so will you be thanked for your benefits. Sirach 12:2. Do good to the godly man, and you will find a recompense, and if not from him, yet from the Most High. Sirach 12:3. No good can come to him who is always occupied in evil, nor to him who gives no alms. Sirach 12:4. Give to the godly man, and do not help a sinner. Sirach 12:5. Do well to him who is lowly, but do not give to the ungodly. Hold back your bread, and do not give it to him, unless he overmasters you thereby, for, else, you will receive twice as much evil for all the good you will have done to him. Sirach 12:6. For the Most High hates sinners, and will repay vengeance to the ungodly, and keeps them against the mighty day of their punishment. Sirach 12:7. Give to the good, and do not help the sinner. Sirach 12:8. A friend cannot be known in prosperity, and an enemy cannot be hidden in adversity. Sirach 12:9. In the prosperity of a man, enemies will be grieved, but in his adversity, even a friend will depart. Sirach 12:10. Never trust your enemy, for as iron rusts, so is his wickedness. Sirach 12:11. Though he humbles himself, and goes crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him, and you will be to him as if you had wiped a looking glass, and you will know that his rust has not been wiped away altogether. Sirach 12:12. Do not set him by you, unless, when he has overthrown you, he stands up in your place, neither let him sit at your right hand, unless he seeks to take your seat, and you, at the last, remember my words, and are pricked therewith. Sirach 12:13. Who will pity a charmer who is bitten with a serpent, or any such who come near wild beasts? Sirach 12:14. So one who goes to a sinner, and is defiled with him in his sins, who will pity? Sirach 12:15. For he will abide with you a while, but if you begin to fall, he will not remain. Sirach 12:16. An enemy speaks sweetly with his lips, but in his heart he imagines how to throw you into a pit. He will weep with his eyes, but if he finds opportunity, he will not be satisfied with blood. Sirach 12:17. If adversity comes upon you, you will find him there first, and though he pretends to help you, yet he will undermine you. Sirach 12:18. He will shake his head, and clap his hands, and whisper much, and change his countenance. Sirach 13:1. He who touches pitch will be defiled therewith, and he who has fellowship with a proud man will be like him. Sirach 13:2. Do not burden yourself above your power while you live, and have no fellowship with one who is mightier and richer than yourself, for how do the kettle and the earthen pot agree together? For if the one is struck against the other, it will be broken. Sirach 13:3. The rich man has done wrong, and yet he threatens with all, the poor are wronged, and he must entreat also. Sirach 13:4. If you are for his profit, he will use you, but if you have nothing, he will forsake you. Sirach 13:5. If you have anything, he will live with you, indeed, he will make you bear, and will not be sorry for it. Sirach 13:6. If he has need of you, he will deceive you, and smile upon you, and put you in hope. He will speak fair, and say, What do you want? Sirach 13:7. And he will shame you by his meats, until he has drawn you dry twice or 3 times, and at the last, he will laugh you to scorn afterward. When he sees you, he will forsake you, and shake his head at you. Sirach 13:8. Beware that you are not deceived and brought down in your jollity. Sirach 13:9. If you are invited of a mighty man, withdraw yourself, and he will invite you so much more. Sirach 13:10. Do not press upon him, unless you are put back, do not stand afar off, unless you become forgotten. Sirach 13:11. Do not affect to be made equal to him in talk, and do not believe his many words, for he will tempt you with much communication, and smiling upon you, he will get your secrets out. Sirach 13:12. But he will cruelly lay up your words, and will not spare to do you hurt, and to put you in prison. Sirach 13:13. Observe, and take good heed, for you walk in peril of your overthrowing, when you hear these things, awake in your sleep. Sirach 13:14. Love the Lord all your life, and call upon him for your salvation. Sirach 13:15. Every beast loves his like, and every man loves his neighbor. Sirach 13:16. All flesh consorts according to kind, and a man will cleave to his like. Sirach 13:17. What fellowship does the wolf have with the lamb? So the sinner with the godly. Sirach 13:18. What agreement is there between the hyena and a dog? And what peace between the rich and the poor? Sirach 13:19. As the wild ass is the lion's prey in the wilderness, so the rich eat up the poor. Sirach 13:20. As the proud hate humility, so do the rich abhor the poor. Sirach 13:21. A rich man beginning to fall is held up by his friends, but a poor man being down is thrust away by his friends. Sirach 13:22. When a rich man has fallen, he has many helpers, he speaks things not to be spoken, and yet men justify him. The poor man slipped, and yet they rebuked him too. He spoke wisely, and could have no place. Sirach 13:23. When a rich man speaks, every man holds his tongue, and, look, what he says, They extol up to the clouds, but if the poor man speaks, they say, "What fellow is this?" And if he stumbles, they will help to overthrow him. Sirach 13:24. Riches are good to him who has no sin, and poverty is evil in the mouth of the ungodly. Sirach 13:25. The heart of a man changes his countenance, whether it is for good or evil, and a merry heart makes a cheerful countenance. Sirach 13:26. A cheerful countenance is a token of a heart that is in prosperity, and the finding out of parables is a wearisome labor of the mind. Sirach 14:1. Blessed is the man who has not slipped with his mouth, and is not pricked with the multitude of sins. Sirach 14:2. Blessed is he whose conscience has not condemned him, and who has not fallen from his hope in the Lord. Sirach 14:3. Riches are not ideal for a man of few words, and what should an envious man do with money? Sirach 14:4. He who gathers by defrauding his own soul gathers for others, who will spend his goods riotously. Sirach 14:5. He who is evil to himself, to whom will he be good? He will not take pleasure in his goods. Sirach 14:6. There are none worse than he who envies himself, and this is the recompense of his wickedness. Sirach 14:7. And if he does good, he does it unwillingly, and at the last, he will declare his wickedness. Sirach 14:8. The envious man has a wicked eye, he turns away his face, and despises men. Sirach 14:9. A covetous man's eye is not satisfied with his portion, and the iniquity of the wicked dries up his soul. Sirach 14:10. A wicked eye envies his bread, and he is lacking at his table. Sirach 14:11. My son, according to your ability do good to yourself, and give the Lord his due offering. Sirach 14:12. Remember that death will not be long in coming, and that the covenant of the grave is not shown to you. Sirach 14:13. Do good to your friend before you die, and according to your ability, stretch out your hand and give to him. Sirach 14:14. Do not defraud yourself of the good day, and do not let the part of a good desire overpass you. Sirach 14:15. Will you not leave your travails to another? And your labors to be divided by lot? Sirach 14:16. Give, and take, and sanctify your soul, for there is no seeking of dainties in the grave. Sirach 14:17. All flesh waxes old as a garment, for the covenant from the beginning is, you will die the death. Sirach 14:18. As of the green leaves on a thick tree, some fall, and some grow, so is the generation of flesh and blood, one comes to an end, and another is born. Sirach 14:19. Every work rots and consumes away, and the worker thereof will go with all. Sirach 14:20. Blessed is the man who meditates good things in wisdom, and who reasons of holy things by his understanding. Sirach 14:21. He who considers her ways in his heart will also have understanding in her secrets. Sirach 14:22. Go after her as one who traces, and lie in wait in her ways. Sirach 14:23. He who pries in at her windows will also listen at her doors. Sirach 14:24. He who lodges near her house will also fasten a pin in her walls. Sirach 14:25. He will pitch his tent near her, and will lodge in a lodging where good things are. Sirach 14:26. He will set his children under her shelter, and will lodge under her branches. Sirach 14:27. By her, he will be covered from heat, and in her glory, he will dwell. Sirach 15:1. He who fears the Lord will do good, and he who has the knowledge of the law will obtain her. Sirach 15:2. And as a mother, she will meet him, and receive him as a wife married of a virgin. Sirach 15:3. She will feed him with the bread of understanding, and give him the water of wisdom to drink. Sirach 15:4. He will be stood upon her, and will not be moved, and will rely upon her, and will not be confounded. Sirach 15-5. She will exalt him above his neighbors, and in the midst of the congregation, she will open his mouth. Sirach 15-6. He will find joy and a crown of gladness, and she will cause him to inherit an everlasting name. Sirach 15-7. But foolish men will not attain to her, and sinners will not see her. Sirach 15-8. For she is far from pride, and men who are liars cannot remember her. Sirach 15-9. Praise is not seemly in the mouth of a sinner, for it was not sent to him of the Lord. Sirach 15-10. For praise will be uttered in wisdom, and the Lord will prosper it. Sirach 15-11. Do not say, "It is through the Lord that I fell away," for you should not do the things that he hates. Sirach 15-12. Do not say, "He has caused me to err," for he has no need of the sinful man. Sirach 15-13. The Lord hates all abomination, and those who fear God did not love it. Sirach 15-14. He himself made man from the beginning, and left him in the hand of his counsel. Sirach 15-15. If you will keep the commandments and perform acceptable faithfulness. Sirach 15-16. He has set fire and water before you, stretch forth your hand to whichever you will. Sirach 15-17. Before men is life and death, and which one he likes, it will be given to him. Sirach 15-18. For the wisdom of the Lord is great, and he is mighty in power, and beholds all things. Sirach 15-19. And his eyes are upon those who fear him, and he knows every work of man. Sirach 15-20. He has commanded no man to do wickedly, neither has he given any man license to sin. Sirach 16-1. Do not desire a multitude of unprofitable children, neither delight in ungodly sons. Sirach 16-2. Though they multiply, do not rejoice in them, unless the fear of the Lord is with them. Sirach 16-3. Do not trust in their life, neither respect their multitude, for one who is just is better than 1,000, and it is better to die without children, than to have those who are ungodly. Sirach 16-4. For by one who has understanding, the city will be replenished, but the kindred of the wicked will speedily become desolate. Sirach 16-5. I have seen with many such things my eyes, and my ear has heard greater things than these. Sirach 16-6. In the congregation of the ungodly, a fire will be kindled, and in a rebellious nation, wrath is set on fire. Sirach 16-7. He was not pacified toward the old giants, who fell away in the strength of their foolishness. Sirach 16-8. Neither did he spare the place where Lot sojourned, but abhorred them from their pride. Sirach 16-9. He did not pity the people of perdition, who were taken away in their sins. Sirach 16-10. Nor the 600,000 footmen, who were gathered together in the hardness of their hearts. Sirach 16:11. And if there is one stiff-necked among the people, it is a marvel if he escapes unpunished, for mercy and wrath are with him, he is mighty to forgive, and to pour out displeasure. Sirach 16:12. As his mercy is great, so is his correction also, he judges a man according to his works. Sirach 16:13. The sinner will not escape with his spoils, and the patience of the godly will not be frustrated. Sirach 16:14. Make way for every work of mercy, for every man will find according to his works. Sirach 16:15. The Lord hardened Pharaoh, that he should not know him, that his powerful works might be known to the world. Sirach 16:16. His mercy is manifest to every creature, and he has separated his light from the darkness with an adamant. Sirach 16:17. Do not say, I will hide myself from the Lord, will any remember me from above? I will not be remembered among so many people, for what is my soul among such an infinite number of creatures? Sirach 16:18. Behold, the heaven, and the heaven of heavens, the deep, and the earth, and all that is therein, will be moved when he will visit. Sirach 16:19. The mountains also and foundations of the earth will be shaken with trembling, when the Lord looks upon them. Sirach 16:20. No heart can think upon these things worthily, and who is able to conceive his ways? Sirach 16:21. It is a tempest which no man can see, for the most part of his works are hidden. Sirach 16:22. Who can declare the works of his justice? Or who can endure them? For his government is afar off, and the trial of all things is in the end. Sirach 16:23. He who wants understanding will think upon vain things, and a foolish man, erring, imagines follies. Sirach 16:24. My son, listen to me, and learn knowledge, and mark my words with your heart. Sirach 16:25. I will show forth doctrine and weight, and declare his knowledge exactly. Sirach 16:26. The works of the Lord are done in judgment from the beginning, and from the time he made them, he disposed the parts thereof. Sirach 16:27. He garnished his works forever, and in his hand are the chief of them to all generations, they neither labor, nor are weary, nor cease from their works. Sirach 16:28. None of them hinders another, and they will never disobey his word. Sirach 16:29. After this, the Lord looked upon the earth, and filled it with his blessings. Sirach 16:30. With all manner of living things, he has covered the face thereof, and they will return into it again.